Hello, AP Seminar students. I want to take a little time to make sure that you spend a lot of time reviewing this document. This is the document you'll be using for IWA revision exercise number 2. And what I'd like to do is to zoom in on what I think are some of the most important features here. So you might feel like I'm reading to you, and yes, I am, but I really want you to know that good writing means good revising. And I'm giving you some really good revision ideas here as you go through your report. So let's look at your introduction and let's look at some of these questions right here. Does the question does the connection you made between one or two stimulus materials and your research question really make logical sense? For a lot of you on your first try, it did not. So then let's look at the second suggestion here, which says, would the introduction sound better mentioning just one stimulus material instead of two? And that's an option for you. Do you explain this connection in enough detail to convince a reader? So can you convince your reader that the stimulus material really does connect to your research question? Finally, does your introduction end with you stating your research question and then your thesis? It should. So at the end of your introduction, if you've done that, you know you've done it well. When we look over here to a sample introduction, we see how someone made one connection to a stimulus material, and we show like this is how the introduction would begin, and this is how the introduction might end. But there's probably some material in the middle that we've omitted just so we can show you a good example. Okay, so we look down at section B here, and section B, again, this is from the rubric, and we're looking specifically on things you could do. It says, A, make sure that the sources you cite show that different authors and researchers have reached different conclusions about your research question. So we want to make sure that there are many perspectives in your argument, that you're not ignoring people that might disagree with your thesis. Let's look at letter B. It says, are most of your cited sources Tier 1 research studies or Tier 2 agency reports, not from Tier 3 simple news reports? Remember, you learned in IRR how important it is to get research studies, and we hope the majority of your sources are here. If you don't have them, this might be a good revision idea to look up new sources to see if you can include those sources in your IWA. Check your works cited list. Do you have at least 8 sources? And if you don't, what could you do? Well, you could go read more sources and see if you can use that evidence. It's important that you know to include only the sources in your references list that you used in the essay. In letter D, it says, in your introduction and conclusion, do you show how your research question is connected to real problems we're facing in the world today? So that's marked letter D. So we come on over here and we say, well, here's some sentence starters you might use in an introduction or conclusion, such as this is a big problem for, this issue has major effects on, or if we don't take action now. Now let's look at these sentence starters for part A. Remember, in part A, we want to make sure that you have differing views in your IWA. So one suggestion is to have a sentence like this. This problem has been debated by a wide variety of people, including. Another one says a different view of this topic can be seen in. The simple expression on the other hand. And author's name, such as Jones. Jones disagrees. Another one, author's name. Garcia sees this differently. So now we're going to go down and we're going to look at letter C. And letter C, again, from the rubric language, this is understand and analyze perspective. And this is where we think we have some really good ideas for revision. So one of the things says, do all of your cited sources come from the same place? Do all the people in your essay agree about your issue? They should not, so fix this. Another one for letter A, do you address opposing points of view in different paragraphs of the counter-argument? Most of you should have 2 paragraphs of counter-argument. Here it says, do you show how your cited sources are related to each other? How they might be similar, might disagree, might differ in a slight way? This is really important. The College Board really values when kids can make connections between the sources that they cite. Not simply list them, but to show how they're connected. So let's look at some of these sentences you could use in commentary to show that. While author A and author B, while Jones and Garcia agree about something, blank, they differ in the way that, here's another one, this difference in blank, this difference in how to solve the problem can be seen when author A, Jones, says blank, but author B, Garcia, claims blank. Here's some other sentences to show similarity or difference, like author A, author B also believes. A different view of this topic can be seen, and on the other hand, author's name disagrees, author name sees this differently. So the last section we're going to look at for revision exercise 2 is part D. And I would say that this might be the most valuable piece of advice because this is really concrete evidence. It says, at least 4 places in your report do you explicitly establish the credibility of your sources. So that means that if you mention a person named Farber, you would add that Farber is a cancer researcher and a professor at Duke University's medical school, and that he was cited in a research study, and you give us the title of the research study. So establishing the credibility of the source should happen at least 4 times in this IWA. Letter B says the information you quote or paraphrase from a source should only contain evidence to support your topic. Leave out the fluff and hot air. And paraphrase and summarize accurately. Quote only selectively. Remember, the College Board does not like big block quotations. They like to see things like letter B here, where you have mostly a summarization of your evidence with certain phrases like carbon-based airborne particulates quoted. Finally, it says in letter C, at least 2 places in your report, can you show how evidence from one of your sources might be more reliable than evidence from a different source cited in the same body paragraph? So here we see an example of this where it says Farber's claims about the health risks of coal burning are challenged by a report titled Debunking the Myths of Climate Change. However, questions about this report's objectivity must be raised, considering it was published by the Heritage Foundation, which receives a large share of its funding from the fossil fuels industry. Now, I realize that that's a lot of information to include about a source, but notice here we're trying to see, can you do this at least 2 times in your report?